listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. Michael, this was an eye-opening Week 8 for me, but for a lot of fan bases, also soul-crushing with a lot of the quarterback injuries that we saw yesterday afternoon. Really a bummer for these QBs, especially it happened with the Minnesota Vikings with a win, but ultimately probably a loss from a season-long standpoint.
Well, I mean, to quote the great Uncle Junior, they were dropping like flies. Speaking of Uncle Junior, they had a big – did you see this on Twitter? My man Kevin, who's the Sopranos
Kevin
guy.
Finnerty? Or who? Which
yeah, did you see the big party they had out there? I got invited. Obviously, I couldn't make it, but I would have loved it. They were actually on the property. They were there.
Wow.
I mean, people were taking pictures of themselves walking down to get the newspaper.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm looking at it.
It was a beautiful, beautiful Dago convention. I would have loved to have been there. It would have been awesome for me to go. I would have loved that.
This is really good. I'm looking at it right now.
I was stuck watching, these quarterbacks. I got to tell you, it was a carnage. I mean, really, when you think about it, Cousins out for the year with the Achilles. PJ Walker killed him in Cleveland, throws the pick at the end of the game. Kenny Pickett has bad ribs. Desmond Ridder went to the bench with a concussion, but he really didn't have a concussion. We saw the Tommy DeVito era begin and end in New York. I mean, they wouldn't even let him throw the football. Stafford gets a bad thumb.
Yeah.
Mahomes is playing on a flu, and he looked like he was playing on a flu. And, it was just, and we got Will Levis playing better. He played in a game, and my man Mitch came and threw 2 interceptions. I love that. But anyway, it was truly a carnage. And then the two best teams, or two of the better teams, San Francisco's defense has given up over 400 yards the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like, somebody's going to have to ask, what's going on here? Because Cincinnati, who I thought would stumble, and I was completely wrong on this handicap, I thought they would stumble, and they looked like they were in playoff form, and San Francisco never had control of that game. I don't give a shit in the first quarter. Like, I could instantly tell when my recommendations are wrong, and in the first quarter, I knew that one was wrong. Knew that one was wrong. So you got that. I mean, the Kansas City game, to me, is a lot misleading when you break that game down, because I think Kansas City lost that game. I'm not sure Denver won it.
5
Kansas
turnovers.
City, yeah, they just gave the game away. They gave the game. Think about this. Just think about this for a second. Kansas City gives them the ball at Denver, the ball at the 39, at midfield, at the 10, at the 20. 24 points total in that area. Think about that. That just by field position alone, they gave them that. They got all their points from those field position spots, 24. So, it was a crazy weekend in that sense. And then, like we said to start the show, I said this on our Saturday show together. There were 9 home dogs going into this weekend, right? 9 of them. And I said it was a landmine, because most people would bet the home dogs just spot on, just sight unseen.
Yep.
And, we saw 4 dogs cover: Carolina, Tennessee, Denver, Arizona. 2 tie. Somebody said they had the Giants at 3.5. Fuck, I never saw 3.5 out there. I had them at 3. I'll go into that when we cover that game. That was brutal. And then Pittsburgh, Green Bay, and Indy never covered. So, it was a landmine. It was really hard.
It was hard. I guess we should have known, with it being Halloween weekend, the trick-or-treat aspect of the NFL that we saw yesterday, it was really difficult. And we will get into the games. I'm really curious, when we talk about the Bengals and the 49ers, that one I think was eye-opening for me in terms of the season-long picture, because we might have a contending team once again back into the circle here with Cincinnati. But the devastating injury for Kirk Cousins, a free agent season, the guy's going to be a free agent next year, now coming off a torn Achilles. And for the Vikings, where it looked like they had something brewing over these past couple of weeks. They beat the Niners on Monday. Then you go to Lambeau Field, where they've had trouble at Lambeau Field, and they control that game and win that game. But at the end of it, you see your quarterback going down there, Achilles immediately ruled out and now done for the season. I'm sure they're waiting for the MRI today, but that's just going to confirm probably what we already know. Where does Minnesota go from here? I figured that we'd be talking about this in a positive light for the Vikings, but unfortunately with the injury, it's kind of a dark cloud that's hanging over the organization.
Yeah, it really is. It's the same, because, everybody makes such a big deal about Flores blitzing, about what Flores is doing on defense. I mean, really, since the Charger game that they lost, I mean, where they gave up 444 yards, 445 yards passing. I mean, this defense has played really well. I mean, they haven't given up over 330 yards in the remaining games. Now they lost to Kansas City. They gave up 333, but that's it. And so, their defense was playing. If they had this defense playing at this level last year, they probably would have beaten the Giants in a playoff game, right?
100%.
They were playing well. But now you're sitting here stuck without Cousins, and you don't have Jefferson, and now you're going to Jaron Hall from BYU, who's, their 5th round pick from this year. He's going to be 25 years old. I mean, he played in the preseason. He had 46 passes, but, this is a tough sled to get into, and he's got to go on the road to Atlanta. So, yeah, I don't know where they go. Like, do they trade Danielle Hunter now? Do they pack it in? I don't know if they'll do that. O'Connell, but they're just everybody says, well, what trade are they going to make? Like, I don't see these teams making these trades to just offset people. There's what quarterback's out there?
None.
I mean, Cleveland's playing with PJ Walker. I mean, if they play, if he could make any plays, he just got there too, So I don't know what Minnesota would do. I think Minnesota, if they trade Hunter, is it going to be worthwhile as opposed to signing him next year or getting a compensatory pick for him? I think they got to make that decision. But, I mean, their playoff aspirations have to go down the tubes completely. I mean, how are they going to be? They can't really run the football. I mean, they're 28th in the league in yards per attempt rushing. They're 31st in calling runs. See, here's the issue, right? So now you go to Hall. All right, so unlike what Washington does, they've been throwing the ball with Cousins who can throw it, right? They're the number 1 team in passing attempts in the league with Cousins, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're going to go to a quarterback who you don't want to throw the ball to. Well, they're 31st in rushing attempts. They're 31st in yards. They're 31st in touchdown runs, and they're 28th in yards per play. I mean, so where are we going?
And I was hoping that we'd see some more called runs there because they put Jaron Hall in the game. He's backed up on his own end zone, and we're running bootleg. I'm like, man, like you're up 14, dude. Just run the football. Make Green Bay actually drive the length of the field to beat you. Like you're inviting like turnovers here. Jaron Hall looked a little bit skittish, but I mean, he's a young quarterback just thrown into the fire of the game there. So we'll see what the game plan shifts to now that he's going to be the quarterback, or maybe they sign up. Maybe there's a Colt McCoy that they call. I mean, Carson Wentz is out there if anybody's interested. He's out there. Who knows what he's been up to. I don't know where you go from here if you're the Minnesota Vikings. And I think that they might, over these next 24 hours, get people calling to say, hey, what is the price for Danielle Hunter? Like, if we give you a 2 for Danielle Hunter, you interested? Like at that point, I mean, if you're Minnesota, maybe you acquire those assets.
Well, I think here's the issue for if you're Minnesota. You say to yourself really quickly, are we going to re-sign him? And what is the cost of re-signing him, correct? And then once you answer that question, then you answer the next question is, unless we get a 2 or we get a bunch of picks, are we better off taking the compensatory for the remaining 9 games? I mean, those are 2 questions you have to answer, right? You got to answer those 2 questions in consecutive. But the first question you have to answer is, are we signing this player next year? And what is the viability of signing this player, or would we franchise this player? Once you make that decision, the other decisions fall in line. Then it becomes just line item. Okay, we only got a 2. We got a 2 today from this team. Say San Francisco says we'll give you our 2. Well, that 2 is at the bottom of the second round.
Yeah.
So would you rather have that 2 today than wait for the compensatory 3 that you're going to get when someone gives them a big deal? Like that's the conversation you're having. But you can't go down that road until you actually decide what you're going to do.
Well, didn't they already answer question number 1, though, when they didn't want to give him the long-term extension that he was seeking this offseason?
Well, that all depends on the money he was seeking, right? And I think he proved himself this year to be a good player, and they've played, in the 8 games? So now they have a pretty good idea about him and what he can bring to the table. I mean, they always knew it. I think the question you have to ask, too, is if I give you this money, how are you going to play? That's always the hard part, right? Once we give a guy a deal, I mean, maybe it would make sense to franchise him for a year.
If you're going to get this effort for him during free agency, I mean, he leads the league in sacks right now. Danielle Hunter has been terrific so far this season. Definitely motivated. 29 years old, so he's not like super duper old, but he's probably at the peak of his career right now. I'm curious to see what his market would look like. But if he leads the league in sacks by the end of the year, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of suitors looking for him come March when he is an unrestricted free agent, pending on if they use the tag on him or not, or maybe they trade him by tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But the Viking situation, obviously, we'll talk more about this a little bit later on in the week there with Kirk Cousins. Once again, a devastating injury for Cousins. The ramifications for him down the line are really unfortunate there. Now him entering his free agent year banged up with the Achilles. But we saw other injuries as well. And we'll talk more about this one as well on the other side here. We're coming up against a break here real quickly. But the Rams with Matthew Stafford, the thumb injury that he suffered yesterday. I mean, he was under duress all afternoon yesterday. Yeah. Only sacked a couple times, but you can see the pressure was there constantly. Yeah. Rams a little bit banged up on the O-line. And now where do the Rams go here with Brett Rippon at the QB2? Stafford couldn't finish the game. Looked like he could barely even like grip the hand there with the thumb. Like this is his turn. It's kind of fallen off the rails here for the Los Angeles Rams now that we're at the halfway point.
I mean, look, the Rams have done two extremes, right? They've gone all in, and now might be the time to go all out. Right, because now might be the time to get a quarterback, to give Sean McVay a chance. Because right now they've done a great job of band-aiding a team that lacks talent together. They have no offensive line. I mean, they go against a good defensive front, they get beat. Pittsburgh had no business beating them, but they did because they could control the front. You know, I don't know how long Stafford can stay healthy. That was always the question for me all year long. Is this Ram team? They're going to game plan the hell out of you. They're a great game plan team. There's no question about that. But can they actually sustain it? I mean, getting 3 wins is a remarkable job for the Rams. Really, it is. Yeah. But when you look at this team as you go forward, teams are starting to figure out what they're doing defensively, right? You know, and then as they where are they going offensively? They got no run game. They can't really run the ball. When he can't run the ball, it's problematic. And the longer the season goes, now they have a bye week after Green Bay, but the longer the season goes, you know, do they trade Aaron Donald? I mean, he's their number one asset. To me, if you're going to tank, right, I know he's a Hall of Fame player and he's tremendous.
Yep.
But, you know, does somebody call up and say, here's what we're willing to do? I think that's a fair question.
The thought crossed my mind watching the game yesterday is like, hey, just leave Aaron Donald in Dallas maybe. Maybe we can go ahead and have him for the stretch run, although it might be a pretty penny to go ahead and get him off the hands of the Los Angeles Rams there. And for the Cowboys on this side of it, like, hey, like this is what they do. They bully some bad teams. Let's see you punch against a team in your similar weight class. Maybe we'll see it coming up on Sunday. All right, we'll take our first break here. This is the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
You know, 3 weeks ago, if you polled the average NFL fan, I think they would tell you the best team in the league, the San Francisco 49ers, 5-0, coming off a dominant victory against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Well, 3 weeks later, they're now sitting here at 5-3, losers of 3 straight games. Most recently, yesterday, 31-17 at the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know a lot of people want to talk about Brock Purdy. I think the bigger story with the Niners, though, is what's happening on defense, because once again, they got gashed up and down the field.
You know, this is the second week in a row they've given up 400 yards, right? I mean, they gave up, and this game was really from the start. I mean, the Bengals start the ball, so they stop them, and they get the ball, and they scope 10 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. They get the ball again, they go 6 plays, 58 yards, touchdown, right? Mm-hmm. Then they miss a field goal, get them back in the game, and then they're going to score before the half, and they fumble. And then they get the ball to start the second half and they kick a field goal. I mean, if they score there, this game's really not as close as the score indicated. I mean, the Bengals played as well as you could play. They blocked them up front. I mean, Burrow was great moving around with his feet. And, you know, you can't deny what they were able to accomplish. I mean, this is a problem when you look at the numbers, right? The 49ers on third down. And this whole team is built to rush the passer.
Yep.
It's built to create turnovers. They're 21st in third down defense. They're 23rd in red zone. And so I know Purdy will get all the heat, but the focus has got to be, if you're Kyle Shanahan and if you're John Lynch and you're sitting there saying, wait a minute, where is our dominating defense? What happened here? What's going on? Like, why aren't we? I thought they missed more tackles than I've ever seen them miss before. They're just not playing at that level that they typically play to. And a lot of it goes back to how they play, right? Everybody focuses on the individual unit. But in football, units are always tied together. The Niners need to play from in front. I mean, look, this isn't a knock on Kyle Shanahan. This is just ultimately what I've said for as long as I've done podcasts. Kyle Shanahan has no drop back pass game. Everything's play action. So when you see that he's 0 for 39 when he goes into the fourth quarter with a trailing by 8 or more or eight points, that doesn't surprise me. Why? Because he's built an offensive line that is built on the idea of run action, run action. When he gets behind in games, it's harder for him to have run action. And so now his line gets exposed. And so then what happens is because he's playing from behind, the offense dictates. And then he can't really get off the field because there's, like with Burrow, there's a lot of easy throws when they play zone if you look off the defensive backs. And so it's kind of a combination of things. It's cause and effect as we move forward. And I didn't see it coming because I thought they would get it fixed. Look, they missed Trent Williams at left tackle. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's always the point in the season, and it happened this time last year, where the 49ers don't play. Remember, they got blown out by the Chiefs. But I think this is a little bit more about, okay, we're changing coordinators. Here's what we're doing. They never got control of that game with their defense. Never. And if you're Kyle, you got to worry about that. And a lot of it starts with your offense. We got to play from in front. We got to be able to be the team that starts the game fast. And when you don't start the game fast, like they haven't started the game fast, and really in the last 2 weeks, they've been playing from behind. They fumbled. They've turned the ball over 6 times in the last 2 weeks, Femi.
Damn. That's not good. That's not good at all. But I
think about this. The Bengals, who don't even want to run the ball, ran for 134. The Browns, who only can run the ball, ran for 160. I mean, that's the last 2 of the last 3 weeks. That's significant.
How much of this, and I don't want to pin this just on one player or on one person. I mean, I think a lot of people, the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, has been under a lot of fire here after what happened Monday Night Football, the zero blitz there at the end of the first half that led to the Jordan Addison touchdown. But also, I mean, Javon Hargrave, who is a tremendous player, hell of a pass rusher, but I think there's been a lot of kind of like underlying criticism about what he does in the run game, and then maybe he's just like he's just an up the field gap shooter who likes to go ahead and pressure the quarterback. And we saw a little bit of this in Philadelphia last year with their run defense at the midpoint of the season, where it's like you could kind of run on the Eagles until they went ahead and got a couple big bodies with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. Do you think Hargrave has sort of kind of hurt this run defense a little bit? Because once again, like another team runs the football here on the 49ers.
Well, because you can run the ball because you're not trailing, right? You're not trailing. You're able to play from in front, so you can mix it up and you can have balance. I mean, look, they only had 9 third downs yesterday, Cincinnati. I mean, that's perfect football. What you want to do if you're a good offense is have less than 10 third downs in a game. This third and manageable is full of shit. I mean, it's one of the most nauseating things I've ever seen in my life. We're just going to go third and manageable. So when you can do that, when you don't have to worry about that, all of a sudden, the run game's in balance and you can do it. The other thing they haven't really done a good job of is creating, like yesterday, they could not create a negative play. Mm-hmm. They couldn't create a negative play. So when you play San Francisco, they don't create a negative play on you and you stay ahead of the down and distance. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, and they got a bye week now to figure it out. They come back and play Jacksonville in Jacksonville. So, but this is all about the front. You can say Hargrave's not a good run player, but the front's tied to the offense, which is tied to getting the lead. It's a chain. And if there's a kink in the chain and it breaks, it hurts everything.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming they're going to get Trent Williams back after the bye week. It sounded like he was progressing well during this week of practice. They wanted to hold him out one more game. Maybe if they get Deebo Samuel back as well, like if they can be a complete offense, that can allow them to then play in front and go ahead and use that defensive line to get after quarterbacks, because that's been the formula for the 49ers over these last few seasons here. On the Bengals side of it, though, man, this was the performance I think everybody had been waiting for. And I guess, should we make a rule on the pod to just not judge the Bengals until Halloween weekend? Like, is that what we're supposed to do here from here on out? Because here they are out of the bye and they look like the team that we all expected.
The guy throws 4 incomplete passes. He was deadly.
he's so good.
Had 6 rushes. He ran for 2 first downs. I mean, he was just incredible. He was incredible when, and they averaged 6.5 a play. I mean, he's 4 for 5 in the red zone. I mean, he was truly, I had him in, he's been in the bottom third of quarterbacks all year. And this week, when I do my Friday look ahead, he's going to be in the top 5 because that was who we know he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was. I mean, think about this though. I mean, the 49ers averaged 8.2 yards per play in the game, Femi. But when you turn the ball over like they did, and then you don't play good red zone, everything is situational, right? It's all about what's the situation like. And the Niners, like a lot of teams, they got to play a certain style. And if you make them play outside the style, they're not as effective. They can still win, but look, you're not 0-39 going in the fourth quarter when you're down by a touchdown and can play anything. Like that's not just a trend.
Mm-hmm.
That's that tells you a lot about the team and about your offense. Think about that number now. That's 39 games.
It's a lot of data. Like you said, it's not just a trend. It's a lot of data there that goes to show you the Niners do not play well from behind. And if you can get on them, maybe you can go ahead and beat them, as we saw the Cincinnati Bengals do. Cincinnati now 4-3. Sunday, they play the Buffalo Bills at home, Sunday Night Football. That's going to be a hell of a game there. Rematch of the playoffs that we saw.
There'll be so much money coming in on Cincinnati. This line will go. This line open. Buffalo was the favorite. This morning when I worked on it, Buffalo was the favorite, and it's already Cincinnati by 2. I mean, one thing about the betting market, you have to look at the Sunday market, what gets played in the Sunday market.
Mm-hmm.
Cincy, Seattle, Tampa, Kansas City, and the Chargers all just got flooded with money this morning by people that do this for a living. Yeah. So Cincinnati's going to go. I think it's 2. It went to 2 immediately. So
it's 2.5. We'll see.
Now. I mean, that's 2.5. You know.
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a game. Also, Pittsburgh getting bet as well. We'll get to them in just a bit.
How though? I mean, you don't even. I mean, you're going to bet. I mean, I guess a lot of this is more about betting against Levis because nobody thinks Levis is going to be able to play 2 games in a row like that. But look, give Levis credit. I mean, they finally looked like they had an offense that could throw the ball over 10 yards.
Yeah. But like this is what we said about him during the draft process. I know we're kind of getting a little off path here. Like his arm is phenomenal. Like that was never a question with Will Levis. It's like can he play fast enough is what you really had criticism about during the draft process, as did I. And we didn't really see him play fast at Kentucky. Played with a lot of turnovers, but they managed him pretty well, and he made the plays down the field there with the Titans, who. A lot of Titans fans now excited. Maybe they found something. We saw DeAndre Hopkins, a 3-touchdown day for DeAndre Hopkins, 4 catches, 128 yards. It was a different level of explosiveness from that passing game with the Titans that we saw yesterday that we hadn't seen at any point, even with Tannehill in at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, they scored 28 points. I think it keeps their streak alive of not having 30 points or more in a game. I think they are second to the Panthers in that streak. But look, they did exactly what they needed. And I know not the Panthers. The Panthers are more in the fourth quarter streak. So I think to me, you know, it gave them some hope that they could they ran the ball. They played their style. You know, they played the style. Now, I was surprised Atlanta ran the ball on them. But and then Atlanta made the shift at quarterback with, you know, they said Ritter wasn't hurt, but he was. Again, Ritter fumbles again. I mean, at some point. But we're going to find out about Tennessee. They've got 3 straight road games here coming up.
That's a tough stretch there. And Desmond Ritter pulled from the game. They said, like, once again, like he cleared concussion protocol, wasn't injury, but Arthur Smith said that they didn't really want to push it. And after the game, Taylor Heineke said that, hey, this is still Desmond Ritter's team. So I'm assuming we're going to see Ritter going forward here for the Atlanta Falcons, despite seeing Taylor Heineke come in and the Heineke coaster. He makes it entertaining, that's for sure. Whenever he comes in.
He really does. How about that, though? Heineke announces that Ritter's still the starter.
Yeah.
And immediately after the Arizona-Baltimore game, Jonathan Gannon says, we're not playing Kyler Murray next week against Cleveland. Like, just flat out said there's no way. Like, immediately at that press conference. So, like, and everybody was thinking that's the game that he's going to come back for. But hold on, he's not coming back for that game. Why? Because I think a lot of it, too, is we don't know, you know, cleared to play and being able to play are 2 different things. So when he went that fast, to me, to rule him out, that tells me he's not moving when they watch him to the same level that he's moving that before he got hurt. It's the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. You can watch him work out and say, okay, he's cleared to play, but can he play at a professional level? That's what everybody misses. Playing at a professional level. It's like Mahomes yesterday. He was cleared to play with the flu, but he couldn't play at the normal Mahomes level.
Yeah, and they needed him to play at that level. There, we'll talk more about that game on the other side here because I want to give that it's just due here. Denver beating the Kansas City Chiefs there. Not a lot of people seeing that coming there. So Tennessee moves to 3-4. 2 games back of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are sitting at 6-2 right now in that division. That AFC South, Jacksonville, we'll get into that game as well coming up here shortly, but Jacksonville looks like a pretty good team. I might have to give the mea culpa on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was skeptical coming into the season, not sure if they could go from good to great, and I'm still not sure if they're great, but they're at least a professional football team that's taking care of business. Winners of 5 straight, now sitting at 6-2. We'll talk Chiefs Broncos on the other side. We'll talk more Jags Steelers, and we'll get into the other games around the National Football League here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
What in the world happened with all these Chiefs turnovers yesterday, Michael? 5 of them against the Denver Broncos. They lose 24-9. Mahomes playing under the weather with flu-like symptoms. The temperature was frigid out there in Denver, which was kind of crazy to see in October, but 24 of 38 from Mahomes, 241, 2 interceptions. They had fumbles, they had muff punts. It was just a complete disaster for the Kansas City Chiefs, who I guess lessened their grip on the AFC West, although we're still handing out the hats and t-shirts. They're going to win that division.
You know, it was a weird game, too, because like I said earlier in the pod, when you break down the numbers, right? I mean, you think, oh, my God, Denver played really well. I mean, I think a lot of it was the fumbles, the turnover. I mean, he had a 59.2 quarterback rating. He had 2 interceptions. Plus, he had Hardman fumbled, Mahomes fumbled, Scantling fumbled. So that's 5 turnovers. And like I said, those 5, I mean, the ball gets on the, all those turnovers happen where the Broncos could score points easily. The Broncos had 40 rushing carries in the game. They averaged 3.8. Their long of the day was just 15 yards. So they kept pounding the ball. And they didn't really need Wilson to have to make. I mean, everybody's going to say Wilson had 3 touchdown passes. Oh, that's great, right? He had 12 completions, 3 touchdown passes,
Efficient.
And so they had 240 yards. I mean, they were able to win third. They were 43% on third down, and they controlled the ball, but they kept getting gifts. Like, I don't think you could take this game as anything other than it was just a bad day for the Chiefs all around. And maybe it was the fact that they're going over to Germany, to Frankfurt. I think they're leaving Thursday. I think Miami left today. So I think their defense was dominating. I mean, they had put a lot of pressure on them. I think it was sacked 3 times in the game. I'm not concluding anything. I'm going to dismiss this as just once in a lifetime when you think about it. How many times does Kansas City get into the red zone and they're 0 for 3?
Not many. Not many times. And like you said, like it just goes like this game goes to show you how hard it is just to win in the National Football League. Like, because like Kansas City, like obviously we all expected them to win this game here, but like they were never going to go 16-1. You're going to have those weeks where it just nothing goes right, and maybe everyone's just making mistakes. And that happened to be this game here for Kansas City, losing to the Denver Broncos here. So you said that this is kind of just a blip on the radar for the Chiefs. To kind of double back to what we talked about last segment, Niners, is that more of a concern, or is that just maybe injuries and then they'll get healthy and then they can get back to being right on offense?
Well, I think it's a concern if you're the Niners because, I mean, you haven't played well in the last 2 weeks defensively. See, again, it goes back to who's in control and who's in the lead. Like, even though Denver was in the lead, I never felt like they had full control of the game, although Kansas City gave them control. Yeah. Whereas when I watched that game, Cincinnati versus San Francisco never was in control. They were fighting uphill. Like, I don't care if the line was 3.5, like it was in the contest, or if it was 5.5, which it was the start of the week, or 6, what it ended up to. They weren't covering that number ever. From the very first quarter, you could see it. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's the difference. So I think you'll see a different Chiefs team here. I think that's why Friday morning a lot of money came in, because the Miami game, again, that's another deceiving kind of game there too. I mean, Miami, they defeat New England by 14. Okay, that looks like they covered, which they typically always do. He's 16-5 now at home, Tua covered at home. Yeah. But when you watch the tape, which I have this morning, I mean, there's a lot of plays in there. Tua at 45 times. He got hit a little bit. They couldn't run the football. Now, they gave up the 42-yarder, and Waddle made some plays because of the secondary of New England, but I think that was a lot closer game. I mean, New England just couldn't do anything on third down. mean, New England was horrendous on third down. They couldn't convert. Mac Jones turned it over in the red zone again, and so I just think, to me, where Miami's offensive line, I don't know if you watched that game, Miami's offensive line has gotten, because of the injuries, has gone from not very good to really bad. And New England took advantage of it, and they were good on third down. The problem was they couldn't get off the field on fourth down. Miami was 3 for 3 on fourth down. New England put them in 14 third downs, which is what you want to do against this team. The problem is they couldn't stop them on fourth down. They're 3 for 3. And meanwhile, New England's 1 for 9 on third down. I mean, it was a classic, but New England holds them to 5.3 yards of play. Yeah. So it wasn't like they sat there and, they got 6.6 yards per pass play. Like, they had the ball 36 minutes because New England couldn't do anything, couldn't move the ball. I mean, this was a classic Patriot game. They can't convert third downs. They turn the ball over. Their defense keeps them hanging on. I mean, they had 13 first downs in the game. I mean, look, you watch the tape. They called pass interference on one of those red zone possessions. I never saw it. I don't know about you, Femi. I never saw it. But then again, you don't know what the hell they call half the time.
They just call what they feel like calling in that game there.
It's like Mahomes in the Kansas City games. I mean, Will Hill sent me a text saying it's almost like Mahomes has an official flag, and he can use it anytime he wants to call a penalty. I mean, I don't know. They threw some flag. I couldn't even find it I couldn't find it when I watched the game.
Is it Mahomes has a get out of jail free card? Is that what you're saying?
Every day. I mean,
is it not enough that he's already the best?
They gave it to Tua, third from the goal line. He threw a slant in there, and I couldn't find it. And the guy that called it, the guy called it. Now, that's not why the Patriots lost, because they were not. I mean, Miami's a better team than New England. I'm not suggesting that by any means. But I don't think Miami's a great team Miami is yet to show that they can beat a good team. Well, and I think there was indications yesterday that a good defense like Kansas City will give Miami trouble.
I was going to say, they're going to get that test on Sunday. That's a bright and early one for us. They're out there in Frankfurt, Germany. Will be the international game, Chiefs and the Dolphins. A very, very important game. Both teams sitting at 6-2 out there in the AFC home field advantage race. Every time I watch the Dolphins, it's like it's a bummer because I swear every single time they have an O-lineman that gets injured in one of their games. That O-line is incredibly banged up. I don't know when Teron Armstead is going to get back there, but even when he comes back, it's like, can you rely on him to stay healthy? It's a tough deal there for the Miami Dolphins. But hey, Tyreek Hill is he might be the best player in the league outside of Patrick Mahomes. Like the guy is ridiculous.
He tilts the field. Him and AJ Brown have tilted the field.
Yeah,
they really have. I mean, AJ, to think that you traded AJ Brown for a first round pick and you wouldn't just increase his pay by, I'm just telling you, that's got to be one that John Robinson just says, I screwed that up. We all do it too. So to me, the catches he makes and how he changes this offense. Because did you watch Philly yesterday?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what they say on the injury
Hurts is injured.
He's hurt.
Yeah, he's injured. Yeah, it doesn't look good. Like you see, we got limping around, and also they had a failed tush push. They fumbled the snap on one of the tush pushes there, which is kind of surprising.
But let me give you the counterpoint on that. I mean, here they are. They scored 38 again on this great Washington defense, right? And they turned the ball over twice. And so, this could have been a 50-pointer.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point does Washington sit there and say, we're not playing good enough on defense? I mean, again, another game. Sam Howell's got 52 passing attempts. Now, he was good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. He threw for almost 400 yards. They averaged 5.3 yards a carry. The game's close the entire game. It's close the entire game. He caught 16 runs. They
were tearing him up in the passing game.
You wonder why in the fourth quarter. Here's his fourth quarter. Touchdown, interception, downs.
That's tough.
I mean, they got and they backdoor covered. If you had the 6.5, I feel bad for you. Because that was a game the Eagles, they're up 14 and then they backdoor cover you. And then Ron Rivera doesn't go for 2. Were you shocked he didn't go for 2?
No, I wasn't shocked because he's not a coach that I would expect to understand that. So
why?
I wasn't
It's Riverboat Ron.
Yeah, I know. We have retired the Riverboat name. When he didn't go for 2, I was like, that's exactly who he is as a head coach. He's just not aware of that situation. So it didn't like other coaches. I would be surprised. Like if Sirianni was in that spot, 100 out of 100 times they go for 2. When it's Rivera, I'm like, there's no way they're going for 2, and he kicked the extra point because that's what he does. He's clueless. He doesn't know what's going on.
how about this though? I mean, how about this one? I mean, when you think about it, Philly has allowed they've allowed 30 they've allowed what is it, 60 some points to Washington in the last two games. I mean,
Hmm.
62 points in the last two games to the Commanders have scored on them, right? The Commanders had 6.8 yards per play, the Eagles had 6.0. I mean, yet they found a way to win the game, and you got to give them credit for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, to me, I thought Hal was good. He got rid of the ball quickly. They used the short passing game to help him. But this Commanders team, you just really did when he challenged that late in the game. Did you think that was the right challenge?
I'm not even sure if I saw the challenge there. What was the play that they challenged?
He challenged. He challenged. Hold on, I got it right here. He challenged the incomplete pass ruling. Slay. It was a pass to Dotson, and he challenged it, and they ruled incomplete.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing here. Yeah,
And he burned a
221.
timeout by challenging it. I didn't think. And then the next play, Hal got sacked for 8 yards. So it was 3rd and 5, and they thought I mean, I thought it was a bad challenge, and you lose your timeout. You got to be
Yeah.
really careful at that point, especially when you're behind in the game, like that when you got to get it back. Can't
You need those
you got to be
timeouts.
100% certain.
Yeah, no, you 100% need those timeouts there. The Commanders, they lose 38-31. Honestly, I think one of the more shocking stats of the day was that Howell was only sacked one time. I would have had that over under at about 4.5 to set that one pregame there. So kudos to them for getting the ball out quickly. The Eagles secondary, I mean, they traded for Kevin Byard, but we saw a little bit more of the same with this Eagles secondary. That if you block them up front, if you get the ball out quickly, you can make plays on this Philadelphia Eagles team. And it's hard to say it's a fluke what the Commanders did this time because they did it in Philadelphia as
They
well.
did 2 weeks. I mean, they can do it. I mean, the enemy West Coast offense, they can move the football on Philly. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And but all that being said about Philly, I mean, if they don't turn the ball over twice in the red zone, the worst this is going to be. The worst it's going to be is 44 to 31. I mean, that's the worst it's going to be. Could have been 50.
To put a bow on both the phenomenal wide receivers that we have in the NFL, we have more than two phenomenal ones, but the guys who have really stood out above the pack, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, both guys are on pace to break the single-season receiving yardage record. Tyreek Hill is on pace for 2,155 yards. A.J. Brown on pace for 1,995 yards. That is courtesy Underdog Fantasy. The record, of course, Calvin Johnson, 1,964 receiving yards. Obviously, there's an extra game, so that helps out, but still, both Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown, like you said, they tilt the field, they make things easier for their quarterbacks, and we're seeing them be on explosive offenses there. We're truly blessed to see these guys in this golden age of wide receiver play. All right, we will get to the best of the rest on the other side and also hand out some hardware here on the GM Shuffle. Don't go away. One final segment here on the DraftKings Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, let's hit a few more games before we hand out some hardware, and let's get to the Sinatra special. I know you've been waiting to talk about this one. I know, had the Giants in the contest with your buddy Chris Russo. They should have won this game. They lose in overtime, 13-10 to the New York Jets. What in the world happened in that final sequence at the end of the fourth quarter? I mean, the offsides with Thibodeau, you had all sorts of stuff going on there. They spiked the ball, they kicked the field goal, go to OT. DeVito was behind the 8-ball. I'm sorry about your bet, man.
Oh, I mean, first of all, so I'm having a nice afternoon. I'm sitting there on my couch, right? Nobody's here. I got no volume on. I got the two TVs working,
No volume.
and so I'm watching the games, and I win the Carolina bet. I took Carolina, and he's getting his ass kicked with Green Bay. We'll get to Big Daddy in a minute.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
And so who's very upset, I'm going to get Big Daddy tonight, actually, because he's coming over here to stay for a little while because he's remodeling his house. So I got Big Daddy as company here, which will be just fascinating to get all these
Monday Night Football.
opinions.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, we have to go through the Raider game, which could be painful. But anyway, so it's harder when your kids are involved than when you're involved. I'll say that. This whole Jet game is fascinating, right? At some point, the Jets figured out. I mean, the Jets should have figured out that the Giants were never going to attempt to pass. right? They were never going to attempt to pass. And yet, for whatever reason, they couldn't stop Barkley. I mean, Barkley averaged 3.6. He had 36 carries. They had 52 carries in the game. They had 12 first downs. The Giants got 5 of those first downs by penalty. That's remarkable, right? So, and one of those drives that they take it down the field, they go 10 plays, 35 yards, they punt. And then they hold the Jets to a fourth down. They stop them right there. And they get the ball. They take the ball over at the Jets 26. Okay. And there's a minute 26 to go in the game. And the Jets only have 2 timeouts. So they run the clock all the way down, and they get it all the way down, and they have the ball at the Jets 17. And they trot out the Graham Gano to take the field goal. So I'm already looking at my sheet. I got my sheets here on my note card, and I checked off a win for me for this. So now I'm 2-0 going into the Sunday games, afternoon games, and he's 0-1, right? And I can hear him quacking in the background, So they missed the field goal. I'm like, holy shit. So now instead of the ball being at the 17, now it's at the 24, and they only need a field goal. And then Thibodeau jumps off sides. They don't keep him in bounds. Next thing you know, and once they made the field goal, I knew it was over.
It was over.
I knew it was over.
Yeah. You needed a turnover because you knew DeVito was not going to move the football at that point. You needed something like Zach Wilson.
They never let him try to even throw the ball. They didn't even try a 9 route. I don't think I saw a 9 route. I mean, this was a punting competition. Do you realize that the Giants and the Jets have more yards punting as an offense than they do as a total offense?
That's terrible. 24 total punts in the game. There was 15 in the first half. 15 punts in the first half. The third down, we talk about third down, how third and manageable is a bunch of the junk. Jets-Giants is the number one example of that. The teams combined for 4 for 34 on third down, Michael. This was terrible.
I mean, and I got Jeff fans. There's like somebody on Twitter today said that the Jets' run defense wasn't as bad as you think. What are you talking about? You knew the other team. Like, literally, if I were coaching the Jets, I would have lined up in short yardage and goal line defense in the middle of the field. Anywhere on the field, I would have been in goal line.
Yeah.
Like, I would have been in goal line. I'd have been in goal line with 2 corners. Fuck it. Like, I'll dare you to throw the ball.
Yeah, throw it. Yeah.
I mean, like, seriously, you gave up 3-9. You almost lost. You should have lost that game, and the other team can't even throw the ball. Meanwhile, people think the Jets actually have a chance to go to the playoffs. With what? With what? With Wilson? I mean, the Giants. When did the Giants become a great defense? I mean, they held them. They did what they could do. I mean, they gave up one big play, the 50-yarder to Breece Hall. But other than that, the Jets couldn't run the ball against them. They sacked him 4 times. He turned the ball over like we thought he would. 2 fumbles in the game. We knew that was going to happen. Like, to me, this is what makes it so damn. Like, there's no reason the Giants should have lost that game. Like, I was sitting there thinking, like, what would you have done? Would you have kicked the field goal?
Man, it was such a short field goal to where you feel like you can make that kick. Like if it was like, let's say like a 48-yarder.
But you're up 6, right? Are you up 6?
You're up
right?
6, and now you need a touchdown to beat.
But you got to kick off.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to kick off, and you still can get beat by a touchdown. I mean, the touchdown beats you.
Yeah.
I mean, would you be better off 4th and 1 and running your best 4th and 1 play with Tommy DeVito? I know that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But just hypothetically, say you ran Tommy DeVito, and say you ran him sideways, and you took up and you just went and you ran him as fat, put him in shotgun, sprinted him as far back as you could, and then throw the ball straight up into the air like you're throwing a 9 route. That would have taken what? How much time off the clock?
Probably at least like 8 seconds or so.
Okay, so you would have taken 8 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And then you take 8 seconds off the clock, and then now they're getting the ball at your 17-yard line with 16 seconds and no timeouts.
Honestly, that's probably like the best scenario in that. Like it's like from a
strategic
strategic standpoint, that's probably the best one.
I think Tommy DeVito takes the ball, right, in shotgun, and he steps back 5 yards. He retreats as far as he can, and then he throws the son of a bitch to the back of the end zone where you have a receiver going down there.
Yep.
So it's not grounding. And that by the time the ball hits the ground, you tell them to throw it as high up in the air as you can. So by the time the ball hits the ground, that's when the clock stops. The clock doesn't stop when it leaves his hand.
Mm-hmm. It has to hit the ground first for it to stop.
It has to hit the ground to stop. So now you've got 16 seconds. They can't beat you with 16 seconds because that's only 3 plays. Plus, that's the field goal. And if any ball's in bounds, it's over.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe somebody mugs one of the receivers and there's pass interference. Like you could get a good outcome out of it as well. And the Jets had no timeouts. Like honestly, that's probably what they should have done, just based on it. Because I
think that's what they should have done. I think that's the play there. Because with 24 seconds, when you kick the extra point, when you try the extra point, then all of a sudden, and you miss it they're giving them 7 free yards. It's a turnover. What do you say all the time you don't want to do at that situation? Turn the ball over.
Turn the ball over.
What did Cleveland say to themselves on 3rd and 4 with the lead 20-17? We can't turn this ball over. He turns it over.
Yep.
So when you that's why if you don't put the field goals in the category of turnovers, you're not thinking this way. Like just take 5 steps back, throw the son of a bitch straight up in the air. It lands down at, okay. So maybe it'll be 20 seconds. So you eat up 4 more seconds than you would have if you got, but they got to go 7 more yards.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you do that and you don't jump off sides, then it's like you're sitting where it's Zach Wilson has to throw like a Hail Mary or some sort of like.
Well, first of all,
on the field play. Yeah.
You only need to rush 2 guys at that point.
Yeah.
See, what people misunderstand about that when they don't have timeouts is you want the quarterback to hold the ball.
Yeah.
You want him to hold the ball when there's so many tight wind, and if you hold him to hold the ball, this guy's going to throw the ball to you. You rush 2, and if he says, "Okay, I'm going to take off and run with it," great, run with it. Where are we going?
All you're doing is running the clock out is what you're doing there when you're running the football.
You're doing.
That's all you're doing. Let's get to the awards here because we're up against it with the time-wise. Let's get to some of these awards. Fred Palermo, best game plan of the week. Who's that going to?
Well, you got to give it to the Bengals. I mean, that was really good. You got to and I like what the Bengals did with their offense. They changed their offense. They got some under center. They did some different things. They caught San Francisco off guard. There's no question about that. You got to give them credit for that.
Who's going on the lamb?
Well, I'm going to read it to you because Big Daddy just sent me this text here last night.
On the lam, we're going to read some text messages. Of course, being the Green Bay Packers.
Big Daddy, here it is here. This is who awful first half. This is who Green Bay is. They will finish with a high pick, take a quarterback, and Love and Dillon and their entire draft will be let go after that draft. Hopefully, Goot and LaFuck are let go too. They get worse each week. Love is regression. This team has quit on LaFuck. They have to fire him. I hope Murphy took those notes down because that's what came from Big Daddy.
Tell Big Daddy they're only a game out of the 7 seed. Fraud of the week.
You got to give it to San Francisco's defense, right? I mean, you could sit there and say Kansas City. I think Kansas City lost the game. I don't think Denver won it. Kansas City turned the ball over, whereas I think San Francisco lost that game. You can blame it on Purdy. That'll be the narrative. But their defense didn't play anywhere near the level it needs to play.
If you don't know, now you know.
A lot of competition for the first pick overall. A lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of bad teams out there, Femi.
Arizona's in the running for that one. It's Carolina's. Well, congratulations to the Panthers, though. Win number 1 for Bryce Young. They beat the Houston Texans. It is what it is.
I love that one. Let's real quick. I know we got 2 minutes, but I mean that game was painful, right?
It was. Tough.
Thomas Brown takes over the play call. Everybody's saying, "Oh, he's going to change the offense." That offense didn't change one bit. They get down to the red zone, and here's your man Frank Wright again. Running fullback. The Browns running the belly up there. Can't block anybody up front. Turns down 3 points like he scores at a rapid rate. Are you kidding me? Then tries to throw sticks into a crowded thing. I mean, that's about as bad as offense as you're going to see. And C.J. Stroud has regressed a little bit too. There's no people now kind of get a sense of what they're trying to do with them.
Yeah, 16 of 24, 140 yards for C.J. Stroud. Bryce Young, 235 and a touchdown. Bryce Young, he battles, man. He's going
to be good if he gets if they get an offensive line. And I think, I feel bad for Camp because he's a good coach, but that line doesn't play very good right now based on that's not a well-coached team. They played good defensively. I mean, they gave up 2 drives in the game and 14 points, but they're sitting right there. So
it is what it is.
I'm not sure Caleb Williams is the first pick overall in the draft. I watched him again. against Cal, forget the body language, forget all that crap, right? Now, I know Drake May lost to Georgia Tech, but only Mac Brown can do that, right? So
back-to-back weeks.
I'm not sure of that. I think there's going to be more competition than we meet the eye. We've had two people on our show. We've had Bucky Brooks and we've had Jim Nagy. Both have said it's not a lock. And I talked to people in the league, and nobody thinks it's a lock.
Yeah, a lot of good quarterbacks in college football. Maybe this thing's going to be a lot more wide open than we think. Maybe it's J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. Who knows? A lot of time between now and the draft process. But that does it for us here on this Monday. Fun episode here of the GM Shuffle podcast. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. Thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to VSiN. As always, thank you to you guys. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Michael, I will talk to you on Thursday, buddy. Have fun with Monday Night Football tonight.